Hello, Physics 277 students, and welcome to anyone else out there in YouTube land who may have stumbled onto these series of videos. Today, this will be video 6 in our series on using the Linux command line. And today I'm going to talk about creating aliases within the command line, that is within the shell. Now, what is an alias and why is it important? Well, in order to demonstrate that, I can motivate the usefulness of this in the following way. One of the things I introduced early on in the first video was the use of the rm command to delete files. And I mentioned how the rm command could be quite dangerous. So let me illustrate the issue for you. When we execute the rm command, the command deletes a file permanently. It is unlike the Windows desktop or the Apple OS X desktop in that when you drag a file to the trash can, you are left with the option, if you decide you want that file back later, you can simply go to the trash can, click on it, and retrieve that file. Of course, you can empty the trash, in which case when you empty the trash, it's gone permanently. However, on the Linux command line within the Linux and Unix file systems in general, when we delete a file, it is gone forever. There's no real recovery option really possible. Their only alternative at that point you could try and attempt, and it may very likely be unsuccessful, would be to shut the system down, remove the disk, send the hard disk off to a disk recovery facility, and ask them to see if they could retrieve it. If that sector of the disk hasn't been overwritten, there perhaps is some possibility they could retrieve it or retrieve part of it. I know someone who has had to do that. It's a very expensive operation, and ultimately it was only partially successful. So for all practical purposes, when we delete a file, it's deleted forever. And that's a danger because the rm command takes a single argument, and as I'll show later when we talk about wildcards, that a single typo can do something very dangerous. It can wipe out a lot of files that you didn't intend. So the way we got around this is when we used the rm command, we used a flag to it, the -i flag. Let me demonstrate here. I'm in my let me go to my home directory here. I'm on one of our campus Linux machines here at Stony Brook, and let me create a fake file here. I'll call it f1.dat. All right, using the touch command, I've now got a fake file there. And if I delete this by saying rm f1.dat, it's gone. If I make some typo or I wasn't thinking and I inadvertently typed a file name that I didn't mean, which is entirely possible, and I speak from the school of hard knocks on this, I've done it myself numerous times early on in my career, that file's gone. And hopefully you've kept a backup somewhere, but if for some reason you didn't, you've lost that information. So instead, what I encouraged you to do was type the rm with the use the rm command with the -i flag set, the -i option, and we'll do this f1.dat. And when we do that, it'll prompt and it will say remove regular empty file f1.dat, and you have the option of saying y for yes or anything else. I mean, anything other than y or yes, right, is going to save this file. So that gives you sort of a check here to prevent you from accidentally deleting a file you didn't want. It doesn't guarantee that. You could absentmindedly say yes, even though you deleted your file with all your bank account information in it, okay, your keys to your Bitcoin or something like that. It still could be possible, but it adds another sort of check to basically make sure that it's less likely that will happen. So in this case, I'll say yes to do this. Now, the problem is having to type -i, you might forget to do it. So is there a way that we could basically force anytime we use the rm command for the -i option to automatically be invoked? And the answer to that is yes, we can create what's called an alias. Aliasing is a feature of the bash shell. It is built into the bash shell. The alias command, which I'm about to introduce, is not a file sitting on disk. It is built into the bash shell itself. And so when I type alias to set up an alias for something, what I'm doing is I'm really substituting one string of characters for another. Let me illustrate this. If I say alias, which is a command built into the bash shell, abc equal, and then in single quotes, XYZ here, and I execute that command, what I've done now is I've created an alias for XYZ that is called ABC. Whenever the shell sees this string of characters ABC, it will interpret it as XYZ, right? Now the syntax of this is fairly simple. We just say alias space, what we want the alias to be named, in this case it was ABC, equal, and XYZ in single quotes here, right? The quotes will not be part of the string that is recognized here. Let me illustrate with something a little more clear than XYZ. Let me type that command again, except this time I'm going to set the alias ABC to be ls space -l. That is, we'll invoke the ls command with the -l option. Now, if I type ABC, look what happens, right? It runs the ls -l command. So this is very useful. So we can use this to set up the rm command so that it executes rm -y always. Here's what we'll do. We'll say alias rm equal, quote, rm -i, quote. No spaces in that R on either side of the equal sign there, okay? All right, so we'll execute that. Now, when I go to delete a file, it will always invoke rm -i. Let me prove that. Let me create a file again. I'll call this f2.txt. So I'll do my ABC alias again, and you can see it lists it. There's the file f2.txt. By the way, I'm not recommending you abbreviate ABC for the command ls -l. I'm just illustrating through something that's somewhat silly how you could do that if you so desired. All right, so that file exists there. But now if I go to delete that, rm f2.txt, right, there I am, I'm prompted. If I say no, all right, and do the ls command again, the file is still there. If I do it and say yes, the file is now gone, all right? So that's a very useful thing. Now the downside here is you'll have to do this every time you log in, unless, right, there's a way that certain commands can be automatically executed whenever you log into a machine. Now, I'm going to show you two different ways that we're going to do this, because on a conventional machine, which is what we're using right here, or I'm sorry, that I'm running on my desktop, all right, you'll do it slightly differently than what we'll do in the math lab. All right, let me do it in the math lab first. All right, in the math lab, in order to have these commands automatically executed, and this is for my Physics 277 students, those of you who are watching who are not from Stony Brook probably won't care about this, but let's cd to my MySB files directory here, and I'll do an ls command. I have a file sitting here called mybashrc, right? mybashrc. And it contains a list of commands that will automatically be executed every time that I log into this system, right? And what I'm going to do is place my alias command in there. Now, this file may not exist for you if you haven't set it up yet. If it hasn't, you can use the Emacs editor in order to edit and place this command in a file named mybashrc. You can create it with Emacs. If you don't know how to do that, watch the series of Emacs videos. At the end of this video, I'll put a link to that series there, as well as a link to the next video in this series. But meanwhile, let's use Emacs and let's edit mybashrc. Right. Oops, and I made a typo. I put an extra V in there. Right. And here's mybashrc, and it's got a number of commands in there. Let's focus on this one right now, the third line on this file. There it is. I say alias rm equal single quote rm space -i single quote. All right. That file now will be sort of executed automatically when I log in, setting up that alias. Now, I will show you how you would do this on a regular machine. Over here in another tab of this Xterm window that I have open, I am logged into my desktop machine at Stony Brook, which is a more conventional Linux machine. It doesn't have a file system mounted that has everybody's account, everybody's home directories on it in that same fashion that we have on the MathLab machines. So there, once I'm in my home directory, which is where I'm at right now, I'll do a pwd, in my home directory is /home/dswesty. In there, there will be a file called .bashrc. Let me show you that. ls-l.bashrc, right? There it is. You normally wouldn't see that because this is one of those hidden files. Remember, any file or directory whose name begins with a dot doesn't show up automatically. If you want to get it to show up in the listing, you have to use the -a option on that, unless you specify the name with the dot in it. All right, in this case, I have a file named .bashrc there, and this is default on most Linux systems. In your home directory, if you're using the bash shell, there will be a file called .bashrc. That's a bash runtime configuration file. That's what the RC means. So let's edit that with Emacs. Here I'll say Emacs.bashrc, and I'll show you. In there, I've got a lot of things set up here, which we'll skip over for right now. But down there at the bottom, near the bottom, and this is a good place to place it in your .bashrc file. And usually your .bashrc file, when it's first set up by the system, when an account is created for you, we'll usually put a little what's called comment down here at the bottom here, following a hash symbol that says user-specific aliases and functions. That's where you should put that. And so right there, I have alias rm equal rm-i in single quotes. All right, so that's set up there. And that's how you would do it if you install Linux on your home computer. That's where you would want to do it. If you're doing it on the MATLAB systems, then in your MySB files directory, you would do it in a file named my-bashrc. All right, notice there's no dot on that. So that's how you do it. Now, one last set of things I want to tell you about here. There's a very useful command we haven't discussed yet, two very useful commands we haven't discussed yet, and I think this is a good time to introduce them. They are commands called where and whereis. What do? They tell you where on a disk commands reside, all right? So if I say where ls, or I'm sorry, not where, which ls, all right? It tells me, gives me the absolute path to where the command ls exists, all right? /bin/ls. So on this system, the ls command is actually a binary file sitting in the /bin directory. There is the absolute path to that. If you don't understand what I mean by absolute path, go back and look at the absolute path video, which was the video prior to this one, or the video where I discussed paths, absolute paths and relative paths. What this is giving me the absolute path to ls, right? Similarly, if I say, let's pick another command like cat, which cat? It's giving me /bin/cat. Now, a lot of the commands that you're going to typically use live in the /bin directory. That stands for /binary, all right? It's shorthand, and that's where these binary files that these commands live, right? Not all commands are basically built in. So, for example, if I say which alias, all right, it's not going to give me an answer. And the reason for that is alias is built into the shell, all right? It is not doesn't exist as a binary file sitting on disk, unlike the ls and the cat commands. Also, if I say which rm, right, it's going to tell me /bin/rm. However, what's really happening is that I've aliased rm and it's not letting you know about it. Now, what is the which command doing? Well, there is a variable that is set in your shell that holds a string of directories in it, a series of directories, I should say, that controls where the shell looks for various commands, and it's called your path variable, and we'll discuss that more in a future video. The which command searches the directories that are listed in your path variable to see where it can find one of those commands, right? If it doesn't, it will not give you an answer, okay? Which is why when I said which alias, I didn't get an answer. There's another command called whereis, which is also useful. It searches a list of common directories, not necessarily the ones you have in your path, for command. It may give you the same answer. Let's try this. Whereis ls, all right? In this case, it tells me ls is found in /bin. It also says there is an entry called ls.1.gz in /usr/share/man/man1. What this is a manual page for the ls command. We're not going to worry about that, but I'm just illustrating this is the kind of result you get. If I say where is rm, it will tell me similar things for the rm command. If I say where is alias, right, it doesn't find anything, right? So this will not see, right, which and where is will not see file, or I'm sorry, it will not see commands that are set up via aliases, and it will not see commands that are built into the shell, right? So beware of that. Okay, this concludes what we're going to talk about in this video. Next video in the series, we'll cover some more commands. If you have questions about any of this, please, if you're one of my Physics 277 students, see me during office hours, or you or anyone else is welcome to post a comment on the video here, and I'll be happy to respond to it as best I can. So hopefully we'll see you here next time. Look for links to the other videos I mentioned in the upper right corner here at the end of this video. Otherwise, we will see you here next time. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of my videos. Otherwise, see you here next time.